Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We are studying tonight the two last Torah portions in the book of Numbers, the book of Bamidbar, and we are studying Parashat Matot and Masei. So, as an introduction, the Jewish people are getting ready to enter the land of Israel and to conquer it, and they're also planning to divide the land by tribes and to settle in it. Now, each tribe was given a portion of the land of Israel, with the exception of the tribe of Levi, as they had their work and service cut out for them in the temple. At this point, right when they're about to start dividing and planning on settling and conquering the land, there are 2.5 tribes that approach Moses with a rather odd request. And the request is, take a look at your screen. We're in Numbers chapter 32, verse 16, Vayigeshu elav. So the tribes of Gad, Reuven, Gad, and half of Menashe approach Moses, Vayomeru, and they say, Gidrot son nivne lemiknenu po. Let us build sheepfolds for our livestock. Ve'arim letapenu, and cities for our children. Now we know that at the end of the day, Moshe Rabbeinu agreed to them doing this, with the exception that they would actually lead the Jewish people, the rest of their brothers, to conquer the land of Israel. And they did so. But they came and they requested that they could set up their livestock and their families here, east of the Jordan River, and not go into the land of Israel. Rashi makes a rather interesting, what's the word? He insight, or he makes a rather interesting observation. That's what I was looking for. Rashi makes a very interesting observation, and he says it's evident from this verse that these 2.5 tribes cared more about their livestock, their money, their materialism, more than their children. How do we know that? Because they came to Moses saying, the first thing they said was, we need to set up a pen, basically, for our sheep, our cattle, our goats, and also set up cities for our children. From the fact that they came to Moses mentioning that they want to set up for their livestock before their children, says Rashi that these 2.5 tribes cared more about their money, their materialism, than their own families. Reb Leib now says that it's obvious that Moses is rebuking the Jewish people for caring more about their possessions than their family, but he said that he's looked high and low throughout many of the Mefarshim, the commentaries on the Torah, and he has not found anyone mention any fault in the actions of the children of God, the children of Reuven, and half of Menashe. Why is it that Moses is rebuking them? What did they do so wrong? He goes further, Reb Leib, to say, I'm going to bring you 3 proofs that what they did was actually correct. This is interesting. Listen to this. Number 1. When Jacob was fleeing from his father-in-law, Lavan, and then they met him. Lavan met them. They parted ways. Jacob now knows that he is about to meet Esav. But on his way traveling, he remembers, I forgot some pachin ketanim, some small jugs. After he crossed over the river, he left his family and he ran back to go get those jugs, endangering his own life. He ended up finding or being found by the angel of Esav, and they fought till dawn. So Reb Leib says this is proof number 1 that what Bnei Gad, Bnei Reuven, and half of the tribe of Menashe were doing by prioritizing their possessions more than their family seems not misplaced. The Talmud in Masechet Chulin says that tzaddikim, righteous people, are very, very careful with their money, with their possessions, even more than their own body, because they understand that it is a gift from God. But more importantly, the Talmud says it's because they are careful not to steal from others, to take anything that's not theirs. And that's why Yaakov went back for those small jugs. He went back for those small jugs because everything that he earned and he worked hard for, and he did not take anything that's not his. So if he left stuff behind, well, he's going to go back and get them. Number one. Second proof. Second proof of where we see that a person's possessions and money is more important than their own life. But more important than one's own life, more important than their children or their child's life. Listen to a fascinating concept. Yocheved and Amram have a third child. Who is their third child? Moshe Rabbeinu. Moses. They have him 3 months premature by grand miracle that God performs, because the taskmasters, the Egyptian taskmasters, knew that Yocheved was pregnant, and they said that, okay, right after Amram and Yocheved got remarried after being separated, 9 months later they should have a child. They knew that they're going to be there, that they're going to come in 9 months. 6 months after pregnancy, she got pregnant, she gave birth, had 3 months to quickly take care of Moshe before putting him in, guess what? A basket into the Nile River. Sounds like a great idea. I don't know. They didn't have any other choice. But how about this? Listen to what type of basket the Torah says they put her in. They put Moses in. They put Moses in a basket made of reeds. Reeds? The Talmud notes that reeds are something which is extremely cheap. It doesn't cost much, if anything at all. And the reason why Amram and Yocheved did so, the reason why Amram and Yocheved put their son Moses in a basket made out of reeds is because they were righteous and their money means so much to them, more than their own bodies, in this case, more than their own child, because everything that they have, they don't steal. Everything that they have, they worked hard for and they deserved it. That's crazy. That means that they were skimping on the type of basket they were going to send Moses off in because they realized that everything they have is a gift from God and they do not steal from others. That's the second proof. Third proof that we see great people putting their possessions in front of or more important than their own lives is Reuben himself. Reuben, the son of Jacob, was careful about the way he treated his money because the Torah tells us a time where Reuben was going out picking flowers for his mother. On his way back home to his mother, who saw him? He bumped into Rachel, his aunt. Rachel says, hey, who are those flowers for? They're for my mother. Oh, please give them to me. I can't give them for free. Okay, fine. So Jacob can sleep with Leah tonight if you give me these flowers. We're not going to get into Rachel over there, but all we want to focus on right now is Reuben. Why didn't he just give his aunt the flowers? Because he realized that everything the Talmud says, from here we see that righteous people are not quick to just waste money or waste things that they have. Why? Again, because everything that they have, they worked hard for, and they did not steal. They did not take that which is not theirs. So to make a long story short, Reb Leib is bringing 3 proofs to prove that what the tribes of Gad, Reuven, and half of Menashe were doing seems to be in the right. They first said our livestock we want to set up and then our children, just like we saw by Jacob going back for his jugs, just like we saw Amram and Yochebed making a basket out of reeds for Moses, and just like we saw Reuven himself not just giving away flowers, rather selling it or trading it for something with his aunt Rachel. It would seem from here, Reb Leib says, that what Bnei Gad, Bnei Reuven, and half of the tribe of Manasseh were doing was correct. So why is Moses criticizing them? They're only caring about the wealth that God blessed them with. What's the issue? So fascinating issue. I mean, this is deep. I think we are all knowledgeable enough to understand this. But this lesson is going to be a cornerstone that if you did not know this, from here on to the end of your life, that you will remember, I can guarantee you, because this is one of the keys to success. The answer of Leib tells us can be understood through a short passage that the Ramchal, Rav Moshe Chaim Lutzato, writes in his famous book Mesilat Yesharim, Path of the Just, in chapter 20. Very, very famous book. Well, we all know about this. In chapter 20, the Ramchal writes about the concept of Chassidut, of being pious. And over there he writes, and I'm paraphrasing a very short paragraph that Reb Leib himself brings down. He says that obviously every single Jew is obligated to fulfill every mitzvah with all of its details. We get that. And a person should never feel embarrassed or even fearful of doing a mitzvah in presence of others. However, one has an obligation to learn good and well when something they are doing, is that an obligation? Is that the letter of the law? Or is it above the letter of the law? Could it be a stringency? And why is it important for us as Jews to be knowledgeable, not only to fulfill our mitzvot properly, but to know and to learn deep about our commandments? It's in order to know if what you're doing is letter of the law or a stringency. Why is that important? Because if one is observing a stringency, says the Ramchal, and that will cause others to mock them, you are not supposed to fulfill that stringency. This is powerful. A stringency that you are fulfilling, and others, in presence of others, and others will mock you because of it, you are not to fulfill that stringency in front of others. Where is this drawn from? This is drawn from a verse in Micha, chapter 6, verse 8. Take a look at your screen. Higid lecha adam matov uma Hashem doresh mimcha ki im asot mishpat ve'avat chesed. Beginning of the verse, he has told you, O man, what is good and what the Lord demands of you, but to do justice, to love loving kindness. Now this is the point, the proof that the Ramchal brings. Vehatzneah lechet im Elokecha, and to walk discreetly with your God, in privacy and in dignity. The word tzniut means to hide, to be discreet, more proper to be private and to be discreet and to be, what's the word I just used? To be dignified, So it's to be private, discreet, and dignified. That's the way to walk in front of God, to observe God's commandments. The Ramchal ends off by saying, there are many pious people. Now, pious is greater than righteous. Righteous is the letter of the law. That's a tzaddik. Chassid is pious. Pious is above the letter of the law. The Ramchal writes that there are many pious people who rightfully do not fulfill their stringencies in front of others, because that also makes them feel arrogant in front of the other people who are not fulfilling them. This is what Reb Leib brings from the Ramchal. So now look how he ties it in. Look how beautiful Reb Leib ties this in. He says, the difference between the three examples that we brought, opposed to the tribes of Gad, Reuven, and half of Menashe, all can be found in the way they requested this from Moses. You see, Jacob returned for his small jugs alone in the middle of the night, before dawn, in privacy, in sniut, number one. Amram and Yochebed, when they prepared and sent Moses off in this basket, was there fanfare? Were there people around? Nobody, just the two of them. It was done in privacy. Even Reuven, when he went to go pick those flowers and he traded them with Rachel, it was done alone in privacy. However, the children of God, the family, the tribes of Gad, Reuven, and half of Menashe, they came out in public to make their request to Moses and claim their piousness. Because in truth, for a truly righteous and pious person, their God-given gifts and possessions are more important than themselves and even their children. But that's a level that supersedes righteousness. That's piousness. That's being pious. And only true Hasidim could reach that level. Anybody who would have seen, if, Reb Leib says, if anybody would have seen Jacob, Reuven, Amram, or Yochebed doing what they did, they would have thought they're nuts. Are you crazy? You're sending your child away in a basket in the Nile River, and you're skimping on what type of building material you're going to make this little raft out of? Berserk! Jacob, you're going back for $100? Really? Reuven, it's flowers. You just picked them out of nowhere. How cheap are you guys? If someone would have seen them, number one, they would have thought they're nuts. Number two, says Reb Leib, they would have not have been able to fulfill that level of stringency. Jacob would have had to leave his vessels. Amram and Yocheved would have to use something more sturdy and more and something that costed more, that had to put more resources into. And Reuven would have to just give it away and not try to sell it. Because yes, the real letter of the law is, of course, your children come before anything else and your life comes before anything else. But a level of stringency, of piousness, of chassidut, is appreciating what you have, number one, because God gave it to you, number two, because you worked hard for it and you didn't steal. Nothing, you didn't take anything that's not yours. So the rule is, and this is the rule, is that piousness can only be observed in privacy. Repeat this. Piousness can only be observed in privacy. This is why a person's true level of righteousness and piousness is only known by one, by God. Because it's all based on the way a person acts when they are alone. Nobody knows how righteous or how pious anybody is. Whether they look it or they don't look it. You don't know how high or low they are. Anybody. Because no one knows what a person does when they're alone. No one knows what goes on in a person's mind that only God knows. When there's no fanfare, when there's no crowds, when there's no cheering, when there's no microphone, when there's no cameras, that's what decides the level of a person. I'll give one exception to God. Maybe just as important as God is your spouse. Your spouse knows how righteous and how pious you are. Because the way you act towards him or her, especially when you may be agitated or angry or didn't have an amazing day or you're pushing each other's buttons or whatnot. That's what decides how great a person is. The big Baal Chesed, the big, nice and righteous, pious person is not the guy who's out in the streets helping everybody. Of course, that's an important thing and it's a great thing. It's how they help their children and their wife at home. It's how they act behind closed doors. It's how they act in front of nobody when only God is watching. Again, remember this. Piousness can only be observed, not only determined, of course determined. You can only observe stringencies, chumrot, in privacy, says Reb Leib. And this was the fault of the children of Gad and Reuven and Chatzim Shevet Menashe, because they came out in the open to claim, we are pious. Look, we're putting our livestock and our possessions, our money, before our children, just as Jacob and Amram and Yocheved and Reuven did. Wrong. In privacy, yes. In public, no. One more twist. If you want, you could log off now, by the way, if you're not enjoying yourself. All right, staying on. Okay, good. Listen to this. Reb Leib says, I want to go a step deeper into this concept of Masei Avot Siman Lebanim, that the deeds of a patriarch or a matriarch do trickle down in a very strong way to their descendants. And the deeds of a person actually are transferred to and teach one's descendants through their actions. So he taught the Jewish people, Reuven, taught his own descendants, Bnei Reuven, right? They're part of his tribes. Taught his own descendants to be careful not to steal, right? He was careful with his flowers. Why was he careful with the flowers? Because he himself never took anything that wasn't his. He taught them never to steal, but unfortunately, he also taught them this trait of having a lack of tzniut, a lack of privacy. As the Talmud tells us, I want to show it to you in the pasuk in the Torah, Genesis chapter 35, verse 22, it says, Vayelech Reuven vayishkav et bilha pilegesh aviv. What did Reuven do after he sold the flowers to Rachel for his wife, for his mother to have the night spent with Jacob, their father? He himself went into the tent of Rachel and takes Jacob's bed out and puts it in his mother's tent. The Torah equates that almost to as if Reuven laid with Bilhah, the concubine, the maidservant of Jacob. Now, of course, the Talmud and all the Mefarshim say, God forbid, Reuven would never do that. He only moved the bed. He didn't lay with his father's concubine. God forbid. But however, by him going into Rachel's tent and pulling the bed out, that's already meddling with something that's private matters. We never do that, especially with one's parents. You're meddling with your father's bed. That's a display of a lack of privacy, a lack of tzniut. And therefore, he served as a siman, as a sign, as a teaching of through actions, as an example for his descendants. Yes, to be careful not to steal, but you don't need to be too careful with tzniut, with privacy, just through his actions. And this served as a source, says Reb Leib, for the children of Bnei Gad, Bnei Reuven, and half of Menashe, for their misplaced piousness. And why? Because of their lack of privacy, their lack of tzniut. That all stems from Reuven. To finish off, Reb Leib says, so what was their punishment? What was their punishment? These 2.5 tribes. The Midrash says that Hashem told these 2.5 tribes that since they cared more about their livestock than their families, in a misplaced circumstance, because it wasn't private, he promises them that they would have no beracha with their livestock. No blessing. As it says in Mishlei, the Midrash proves it through this verse, Mishlei chapter 20, verse 21, Nachala mevohelet barishona. An inheritance may be acquired hastily in the beginning. V'acharita lo tevorach, but its end will not be blessed. And this verse, says the Midrash, alludes to these 2.5 tribes that were blessed with so much, but were left with absolutely nothing. This is the Midrash. Reb Leib now comes and says, you know what their punishment was? Hashem said they would not be blessed. Their livestock will not be blessed. Their misplaced chasidut, piousness, and lack of tzniut, lack of dignity and privacy, cost them everything, says Reb Leib. And this, unfortunately, for them, fortunately for us to try to hopefully understand and change our ways, makes perfect sense with the concept called midah keneged midah, measure for measure. You know why? Because the Talmud says, where is bracha found? Blessing is only found in something that is private and hidden. Tzamui min ha'ayin, when it's hidden. If blessing is found when something's hidden, what's the reverse, says Reb Leib? That when something is not private, when it's lacking privacy, it won't be blessed. It's simple. It's private, it's hidden, it's blessed. It's out, it's in the open, it's in front of others, it won't be. This is a powerful, powerful lesson. In life, we always have this struggle. What do? People are going to see, people are going to talk. The Talmud says, do you know why for at least a month, but in most cases, at least 3 months, a woman does not show she's pregnant physically, so this way others will not look and say, she's pregnant, or she's pregnant again, or she's having a child or another child. Because the fetus is so vulnerable during those first 3 months, the Talmud says that even a person's thought like that has the power to sabotage that development. If we look at the entire globe and all the species on it, says the Talmud, there's one species that outnumbers all the rest by multiples. Which species is that? Water life. Fish. And you may ask why? Because fish are beneath the ocean. They are hidden from our eyes. We don't see them. Whatever we don't see has blessing. Whatever you don't talk about will have blessing. You don't need to tell everyone, or anyone for that matter, what you do to provide for a livelihood for your family, or great things that happen to you. Yes, there are certain times where you need to share because you need to help others and encourage others. We get it. But the more we can keep private, the better. We learn this week's Torah portion from the tribes of Reuven, Gad, and half of Menashe, who came to do a pious request. Remember, according to piousness, one's possessions are so important to them, even more than themselves and their children. But they came to do this pious request in a public manner, which is completely a lack of privacy and is misplaced. So again, the rule is, and remember this rule, that piousness can only be observed in privacy. And if you want blessing, you keep it private. If you want something to not be blessed, you keep it public. Just as a thought that came to my mind, look at the world that we live in now. Now nothing's private anymore. It's all on TV, it's in the news, it's in social media, everything's out in the open. A suggestion, you may like it, you may not. You may hate me for it, you may like me for it. It's a suggestion. Maybe all of the hardships and the calamities that are taking place in the world could be because there's no more concept of privacy in the world that we live in. Could that be? We're not here to blame anyone. We're not here to say that people deserve hardships that come their way. But could this lack of privacy be a source of a lot of hardship and calamities that take place in life? Or, if you don't like that, maybe there's always been hardship and calamities worldwide throughout world history. Just now, we hear about it and we know about it because we have methods to communicate and to share it. I think my first option is more true, although the second one has truth to it, but something to contemplate. Could it be the lack of privacy that we have in the world that we live in today? May that be contributing towards hardships throughout the world. I thank everyone for joining us, and may the merit of Rabbi Leib's Heyman be upon all of us, and may we learn this tremendous lesson of how privacy will attract blessing, and how there is room for stringencies and piousness and chassidut 100%, but don't misplace it, because misplacing it only leads to a lack of beracha, lack of blessing. And what do we all want? We all want to be blessed. We want our children blessed, our entire family, our community, and the entire world. So attract blessing through tzniut, through dignity, through privacy, and through understanding that we are judged by God alone. Meaning when we are alone, that is the true colors of a person that nobody will ever know. Maybe your spouse. Thank you for joining us. And if you have any questions, now's the time to go for it. Well, we don't have Isaac on, so we're going to give Eileen our first question.
I'm really just quite complimentary. It was just a beautiful class. I don't have any questions. It always all comes together.
Thank you.
Amazing class. This is beautiful.
Thank you.
Lots to think about, but a great class as always.
Outstanding, Rabbi, outstanding.
Oh, Yasmin has a question.
Wait a minute.
Hi, good evening, Rabbi. Good evening, everybody.
Thank you, Rabbi. Good evening.
Oh, sorry. She's going first? Okay. Okay. So, Rabbi, my question is this. You were mentioning regarding Yaakov not having the right intention when he was having his relations with the people that he was having the relationships with. So my question would be, they were blemished. So is it fair to say that David HaMelech was also blemished because of the way Yishai had his relations with the servant that he let go, freed instead of his wife? That's the reason why even David was red. There's a connection with him being red for that reason. So could we say that he was blemished for that too?
Possibly, but I do not recall Ishai not knowing who he was with when he was with her.
Well,
even Jacob had relations with his maidservants, and then, meaning, here's this. Why is it only Gad, Reuven, Gad? Let's just go with those two. Forget half of Menashe for now. Why is it only Reuven and Gad? What about the next? What about Shimon, Levi, Yehuda? Right? What about Asher, who is the next child after Gad? Were they blemished? No, because at those moments, Yaakov knew who he was with. Just the first time he was with Leah, he thought it was Rachel. Okay, from then on, he knew who it was. The first time he was with Zilpah, he didn't know who it was. So that's where that blemish came from. You understand?
But isn't the story that we know that Nitzvah told the servant to go out of the room, and she snuck in the room to be with Yishai, and Yishai thought he was having relations with the servant, but not with Nitzvah, and it really was Nitzvah, his mother?
I'm not 100% clear on that. I don't want to say yes or no because I'm not 100% clear.
Okay. All right.
But if so, then we have a big question and we got to look into it.
Please, because it would be so great, because I would love to hear it, because supposedly the Zerah Shimshon says that's why he was red. There's a whole story about him being red because the neshama and the seed of David didn't want to go into the egg of his mother.
Okay, so send me that source in the Zerah Shimshon so I could look it up if you have it.
I would really love to hear it because I always thought it's such an interesting story with the whole secret and how Mashiach comes from something, like you said, so like dark, but it's really light, and we think it's bad, but it's really good. So I would love to hear that.
Okay, yeah. So send me if you have that source and I'll look it up and I'll get back to you. Great,
you.
thank you. Hi, Jacob. How are you?
Hi, good. How are you, Rabbi?
The sun is not set yet. It's 9 p.m.
It's 9 p.m. here in Canada. Not yet, but I'm preparing our barbecue for the next limona. That's what I'm working
nice.
on now.
Nice.
Listen, Rabbi, I'm always confused. I always studied that, it's also good to publicize that you donate, to encourage others to donate and to give. But now you're saying the opposite, complete opposite, no?
No, we've spoken about this multiple times.
Okay.
You're 100%. We've spoken about this multiple times. Part of the donations a person gives has to be in public with the true and genuine intention to encourage others to give. But part also should be given in private. Now, what's the ratio? What's the percentage? Every person has to determine themselves how much they can genuinely give that is enough to encourage others to give, and how much beyond that is no need, and then they should give privately. But what we're talking about privately is not only in realm of giving, it just means in realm of what a person does. You don't need to share with everybody, or that fact, for a matter of fact, anybody, your private dealings when it comes to making a livelihood, when it comes to how you deal with your family, how you deal with your wife. These things are private. Now, if it has certain involvement or certain benefits of speaking about it, so then yes, if you're speaking to your partner about it, if you're proposing it to a customer, to an employee, to an employer, so then there are certain aspects of this privacy that can be breached for the sake of a good cause. But in general, most of those things should be in private.
Not to show off, basically.
Exactly.
Yeah. Fair enough.
Good.
Thank you. Yep, good.
So, Rabbi, along that line, what Mr. Abekassis mentioned, which is so powerful,
Jacob, please.
when we work in Kiruv, there's a fine line because you want to, bring people closer. You want to show good examples, but like you said, you don't want to reveal everything, but just enough to have people come closer and to do mitzvot. It's a Kiddush Hashem, right?
Okay,
So maybe it's not the same for men and women.
Don't get it.
No, meaning not to be so public. But on the other hand, when you're in Kiruv and you're public, then you affect people. And
but
it
doesn't mean. I understand what you're saying, but privacy, there are certain things that you need to do open. Meaning, let's say as a man, it's better to go to pray with the minyan at the synagogue in public than in private at home. Oh, but you may think, well, people are going to know that you're praying because it's in public and you're visible. Maybe it's better to pray at home in private where no one sees you. There are certain, and that's wrong, obviously, there's certain things that you need to do in public, and that's the way that should be done. Not everything has to be in private, if you understand what I mean. Right? So if you need to be somewhere or go somewhere or do something or share Torah or even do a mitzvah or do a chesed, do an act of loving kindness, you can't, you many times you can't do it in private, and it needs to be done publicly.
Yes, that makes sense. I had another question. When you were saying that it's best not to adhere to a stringency amongst people who do not hold that way and may mock you. So my question is about observing Rabbeinu Tam for Yetziat Shabbat. Is it wrong to want to keep that?
Okay, so that's why I preempted. Is that the right word?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, preempted what?
I preempted that line, that concept, with what Leib said. The obligation a person has to really be studious and learn about what is the letter of the law and what is a stringency. So. And that's why it is kind of complicated when it comes to just observing simple halakha. you need to know, is this the letter of law? Is this a stringency? Should I keep it? Should I take it on? Should I take it on now? Should I take it on in the future? Should I never take it on? Should I do it in private, in public? It's very complicated. So,
Mhm.
and that is the same with every single mitzvah. It gets quite intricate. So when it comes to that specific question, the observing of Rabbeinu Tam, which is a later time, 72 minutes after the sunset, which is longer than most of it's at least 20, 25, 30 minutes, depending where you're living in the world, longer than the regular Shabbat exit.
Right.
That is, according to the Shulchan Aruch, the basic law. It's not a stringency according to the Shulchan Aruch.
Oh, so then once we know that and we quote that, then they can't mock us.
So there we go. So then it's a stringency. But what's important to note is it looks like a stringency. So they're going to make fun of you. They're going to say, oh, you're always ending Shabbat an hour late. Like, what's with you? So you need to know, and that's for this halakha, like a zillion halachot that we have. You have to know that, well, in truth, there is a dispute on how do we calculate the sunset and the stars coming out and the emerging of the evening. And the Geonim, who lived in Europe, had a much quicker sunset and stars out than the Sephardic Jews had where they lived, whether it be in North Africa or in Spain, or specifically even in Israel. And therefore, that time elapsed is longer. And based on where we live, it is still considered a long enough elapsed time where it still makes sense, according to the letter of the law, to hold 72 minutes from sundown. So
Right.
again,
Plus,
everything comes with a little intricacy. I think nowadays the idea of being mocked in public for stringencies is only relevant amongst people who are very knowledgeable. You understand?
yes.
Because amongst people who aren't knowledgeable, everything is mockable, and everything seems like a joke or like oh, you're inventing it. I think this idea of holding, and I'm happy we discussed this. It clarified it for everyone, including myself, that this idea of a stringency being mocked is only applicable in a place where people really, really understand, really know, right?
Yes, because then people know. I know very often your father and your brothers, they learn what is the kula for things. So I remember that recently they learned that when having to cut, it's best to prepare toilet paper cut in advance or use a tissue box that does not require any cutting. So they're already separate. But there are poskim that say that if you have no other choice and it's not available to you, then you're allowed to cut it. Not only like one would think that you have to cut it with a shinui, but you can even cut it without a shinui if you don't have another option. Right. So this is something that, for instance, I didn't know, and they had to correct me on. You see what I'm saying? So we're back to what you said. It's very important for us to know where is the letter of the law and where is the chumrah. So I guess we have to keep learning, Rabbi. That's it.
Always, our entire life, nonstop.
Thank you. Absolutely. Kol hakavod. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Great to see everyone. We have people from all over the world here. We have Montreal, Toronto, New York, Florida. We got Chicago.
Yes.
Wisconsin.
And Ottawa. We have one of my ladies from Ottawa's here.
We have Ottawa. Where do we have Eileen?
I said, so nice. You got from all over the world. You really do. And from all parts of our country and yours.
Thank you.
Great
to see everyone. Have a great evening.
And Shabbat Shalom, everybody. And Chodesh Tov. We'll see you next month.
Yes.
Amen.
Shabbat Shalom. Thank you.
Bye.
All the best.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Kol Tuv.